Alright, it's a new year and we don't have any new projects, but we got the same projects. So, we are moved back onto our Mercedes, our 69 Mercedes 280 SL. Remember prior we've done the repairs back here on the tail panel, put the quarter patch panel on the right side of the car, and did some repairs to the underneath panel behind this tail panel piece. So now we're going to start on our wheel well repairs, and I've already started on this. Basically the same process I've done on a lot of my other repairs. Find my spot welds, drill them out. I've got it separated from here first, then I marked where I wanted to cut out my section at, and I've got that section removed from the outer wheelhouse, and we're going to do that piece first to make sure this stays good and doesn't move anywhere. And then I need to cut out a section of the inner wheelhouse panel, and behind this inner wheelhouse panel is a frame support. It's a part of the frame from the car, the unibody framing, and that needs to be replaced too, because if you can see under here, it's pretty bad. It crushed in the first time I put this car up on the lift, so it's in bad need of repair, and that's an important part of the car to keep the structural rigidity. I don't believe I'm going to have any issues with the car moving, because I am leaving the majority of this inner wheelhouse in, and we'll have all of the outer wheelhouse in. I will put a jack to support the rear frame back here, just in case anything wants to move in any way. But I don't think anything's going to go ahead and move on the car. So that's where we're at with this one. I'm going to bring you back periodically as I make progress on this project. You've seen me done a lot of repairs in the back with metal patch panels. That's basically what I've got coming up here for the next little while. I've got to get caught up on this car. I've got a lot of rust repair to do on it, so we're going to be working on this one here quite a bit. I got in some new panels for the Ford F350 project we're doing. I'm going to jump back on Project Zombie and try and knock a lot of that rust repair out and panel replacement too. So I know, strap in again, here we go with some more rust repair. We'll get around to doing some final body work here sooner or later, but we got to fix the rust first, get the cars back solid. Alright, just to bring you up to speed on things here in the wheel well in the Mercedes. As I was working on this yesterday, I got this piece cut out of here, and I was going to go ahead and cut that patch panel to put in, but then I got looking at how the inner piece is put in here, and this section here is part of the inner panel. Now this needs to be welded in here, and of course it gets welded to the frame rail piece that's in here. So I've opted to go ahead and do the inner structure piece first, and before I did that, I mentioned in the last little segment that I was going to support the back of the car with a jack, which I have done here. And the reason I did that is because when I looked at the car yesterday, the trunk lid gap had changed. This side had opened up, and this side was actually touching the trunk opening. So that told me that the back of this car was sagging down this way, so it was making the vehicle tilt. So now I've got this supported good. My trunk gap is where it should be on both sides. So the frame rail piece here that's rotted, and it's rotted pretty significantly, is an important structural piece on this car. And this didn't show up before, because when the car is on the ground with the weight of the vehicle on all four wheels, the suspension actually pushes this back part of the car up, so it keeps it up where it's supposed to be. And that's why it didn't show up before. That only the movement in the body only shows up when the car is sitting up on the lift, with no weight on the suspension to push the body back up where it's supposed to be. So I've got to figure out how to get inside of here, because this frame rail piece comes from here down and it extends another almost 12 inches up inside the inner rocker. So I have to figure out how to get inside of there and get that whole piece reinstalled and re-welded properly so that the structural rigidity is back in the car on this section of it. So that's where I'm at with this, just pondering along with how I'm going to attack this. So I'll bring you back when I figure it out and show you what I'm going to do. Alright, I've done a little bit more exploring on this car, and I had to, what I did yesterday before I put this screw jack under the frame is I tied the body down to my lift so that when I put pressure on the jack back here to push the body up, it wasn't lifting it off the lift arms. So I had to undo that, and I would let the pressure off here because I needed to take some stuff apart in the interior, but I wanted to show what's happening back here. As you can see on the back of this trunk lid on the left side, we've got a nice big gap that opened up. As you go across, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until over here the trunk lid's actually touching the trunk opening. So that's how I know that the body's dropping, and why I've got the jack under here to keep things up where they need to be until I can get the frame rail piece put back in, which I've cut most of this out in here. I know it's hard to see, I got the light inside, but it's rotted pretty good. So I started looking around in here to figure out where and how far that piece comes inside, and it actually comes right around, it comes right to here. It slips in along the rocker. This is the inner rocker. This is actually the main structure of this car because it is a convertible. So this piece attaches to this inner rocker, comes down along here, attaches underneath the cross brace here that goes side to side on the car, and I have to take out this panel to access it some more, but the rear pan here is welded to it along the side here, and we've also got some rust that formed down in here. Some of it is that rail itself, some of it is the little section of the rear pan, which I'll have to just fabricate some pieces for and get that put back together. So as we go along, this repair gets a little bit more complicated as we go. So we'll have to see just what it's going to take to get that apart, but this actually is getting to be a little bit more involved than I had anticipated from the beginning of this project. But in order for this car to be right, these pieces have to be put in, and they have to be put in properly and welded up properly. I can't just fit the piece in where I can see it and weld everything together, because there's a lot of rot around the things that attach to that rail, and that is giving the car its structural rigidity. So I want to make sure everything's put in properly. Well, I finally got that piece out. This was a chore for sure. This frame rail piece that goes in here was something that was not really designed to be replaced on its own because of all the other panels that bolt, or not bolt, but weld to it, like this rear floor pan section, this upper cross piece here, the front part of the trunk pan. We've got the main cross member here, which is where the suspension is bolted into, and then you have to contend with the inner rocker panel and also this upper support here. So I had to end up cutting it apart in several sections, as you can see here from the aftermath on the floor. I just would remove pieces and cut around, so it would make it easier for me to get at these spot welds and get everything out. I've kind of fit the new one in a little bit. I have to trim away at it some in order to get it to fit, but before I do any of that, I need to repair the inner rocker, which has a gaping hole in it, and get that solid again, because that other piece does weld to it. Now, some other shops may just put the frame rail piece in and cover that hole over and say, well, nobody will see it, but I want the structural rigidity back in this rocker, because it is the main frame rail for the car, more or less. So we'll get all that fixed up, and then we'll get the frame rail fit and start welding it back in, and that'll give me that'll give the car back its structural rigidity, so it's not drooping at the rear. As of right now, everything still lines up well. The door gaps are perfect still. Body lines are good. And my trunk gap at the back is still good across. So nothing's moved since I've taken all that out. That's why I've got this jack support under here. If this wasn't here, this whole back end of the car would have dropped down probably 3 or 4 inches. And caused a lot of other problems, because it would have buckled the quarter panel, could have possibly broken some glass. So if you're doing this at home and you don't have a jig, this is how you do it. You got to make sure your car is supported in enough spots that it's not going to move. Alright, good progress made today. I've got my rocker panel section repaired. I fabricated a piece to put in here and have it welded in. And a lot of these welds you see up in here, I don't have to worry about grinding, because that frame rail piece is going to sit in here, and it actually will attach here and here on this piece. It'll slip over top of all of that weld, so there's no reason for me to waste my time grinding and making that weld look pretty and disappear. It's just not needed. And then but all this under here will get ground down, and that will need to disappear. So we're getting there. The other piece I've fixed is inside here. That little plate there is where there's a tube out here, and that's what you stick the jack into to jack this car up. So that needed to be repaired also. The bottom part of it was rotted away, and we've got that fixed. So if need be, jacked up at that point again with the factory jack, it can be. It'll withhold the weight of the vehicle. So now that we've got that fixed, we're starting to get the structure back in this car. Next thing to do is fit that frame rail piece and get it welded in. And then we can move on to the wheelhouse pieces. Okay, I got the frame patch piece all welded in. Had a lot of little pieces to make and some brackets to make that where I had to cut pieces away to get this out of the car, which I'm going to show you. So I got all this welded in. I just wanted to talk about this area back here. This frame rail was originally one piece from where it connected to the inner rocker down here all the way to the back of the car. So they do sell this piece because I guess this is a common area where these cars rust out, and it's not a Mercedes piece. I've been raving about the patch panels that I've got for this car in, but this is not a Mercedes piece, but it is very well made. It's very, very close. There's a couple areas that aren't exact, but it's really close. But it's all there is out there to fix this. So you have to cut it here, cut the original frame rail here where this one ends at, and join them together. So rather than just butt welding this, which I did, and then ground it down, I also decided to go ahead and what they call this a fish plate, where you have a piece of metal that overlaps your joint, and then you weld all around it. So I put 3 of those in, one here, one on the back side, one on the top side. So these will help strengthen that joint rather than just having a butt joint from here up and around. This part actually laps over this part of the frame rail like the original did, but this will add additional strength to this repair. So I've got all that finished. I've got it welded in all along the bottom part here. The top side is all welded back in. We'll go up on the inside and look inside the car here. One of the areas where I had to make a plate for is right here, because this panel, there was no way to just get this undone in order to get all this out of here to put it back together. So I had to cut it along here, which in order to make this strong again, I put an angled gusset piece in here, welded it around, and I did the same thing on this side, and I put one down in here also where the cross member piece would meet up against the inner rocker. This piece I was able to weld back in here and welded the frame rail piece to the inner rocker panel good and solid rather than just spot welds. And then also got the cross member welded on top of the the section of frame rail. So it's welded in good and solid again. This car should have all its strength back now. I've got a couple of small repairs to do to the floor pans on this side. Once everything else is done, right now I'm going to work on getting my piece cut for the inner wheelhouse and get that put back in, and then the outer wheelhouse section in the front here will go in, and that'll leave this repair back here completed. And hopefully, which is the way it should be, when I take that screw jack out, the car is not going to drop. Well, there we have it. We completed the rust repairs in this wheel well section. Replaced the inner frame rail piece here. Backs up to this inside wheelhouse. We made a small repair section here for the front side of the wheelhouse. The only thing I have left to do in this part here, I've got a couple of small sections of the floor pans that I need to replace in the back, and that'll leave this all repaired up and ready to move on to the next part of this car, which will probably be the front floor pans in here, and working up in this front wheel well section area. So as we continue on with the work on this Mercedes, I hope you got something out of this video, fixing up this section of the frame, showing how you have to brace up the car properly. Even if you don't have a jig, there's ways you can do it in your home garage to make sure that everything is good and level and your door gaps stay nice. As we can see on this here, I got my door gap is really good after everything's in. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you're not subscribed yet, I know I get a lot of views on my videos of people that haven't subscribed to the channel yet. So if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and then ring that bell so that you can get notified when I continue on with work on this project and all the other projects going on here at the shop, and you can see the things that are going on. So we got a lot more sheet metal to replace on this car. We've got some rust repair going on some other projects. Unfortunately, that's the bulk of what I'm doing right now is getting these cars back solid before I can get into the meat and potatoes of doing the body work and getting this one here painted and a couple other projects going on. So bear with me while I continue on with sheet metal replacement and rust repair. I've got a special trip coming up in a couple weeks that I'm going to be going down to see a fellow YouTuber down in South Carolina and helping him get some work done on his car. So we'll get some video footage of that when we go down to do that. But again, I appreciate everyone following along. And again, tell your friends, share these videos wherever you can. Help get my subscriber numbers up and my view time hours up. And we'll see what new things we can bring to the YouTube channel. Thanks again.